Hey everyone, I'm Liz Fairy and today I'm going to show you how to make basic clothes for your crochet dolls. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to make a basic circle skirt for your doll. This pattern is really easy to customize to any size doll, but I'll be making mine to fit these two different dolls. My realistic doll and my basic doll. Some other things you'll need for this tutorial are a crochet hook, you can use any size you like, I'm going to use a size E. A pair of scissors, a yarn needle to sew in your ends. You'll need some bobby pins or stitch markers to keep track of your stitches. And you'll need yarn. You could really use any yarn to dress your doll, but I find a thinner yarn works better because it won't add too much bulk to your doll. So I'll be using crochet thread. If your doll is small enough, you could also use embroidery floss. If you like, you could use a shirt to add the skirt to make a dress. Find a link to my doll shirt tutorials in the description below. You don't need to use a shirt to add the skirt to if you just want to make the skirt on its own. And you can find written instructions for this skirt on my website. That link is also in the description below. If you want, you could start your work by creating a row of single crochet all around the base of your doll's shirt. That's what I did for this dress. I used two different colors of yarn for the shirt and skirt for this dress, but if you like, you could use the same color to make it look like one continuous piece of fabric. If you're using two different colors though, work your first row into the back loops of the stitches at the bottom of the skirt so that the edges of the colors look more clean. But for this skirt that I'm making now, I'll just start with a foundation chain instead. For both dolls, I chained 18 for my foundation chain. I'm using a number divisible by 6 to make it easier to increase, since I'll be increasing 6 times per row. If you want, you could increase by a smaller number if you want a less bulky skirt. Just make sure to chain a number divisible by however many increases you want to make in each row, to make it easier to increase. Or if you want a thinner skirt, just don't increase at all. For the basic doll's skirt, since the doll's waist, hips, and legs stay the same width, I'm going to work in the round to make the skirt. So join the chain in a circle with a slip stitch into the first chain to work in the round. Then I'm going to chain 1 to count as the first stitch of the row. Then I'll work into the rest of the chains, starting with the second chain. Begin each row in the round by single crocheting into the first stitch of the previous row in a spiral. The pattern for both dolls is pretty much the same, except that for the realistic doll, I'll work in rows instead of in the round for the first few rows to make it easier to put the skirt on the doll. So I'll show you the rest of this tutorial using the skirt for the realistic doll. If the skirt you're making is more narrow than the doll's hips or head, work in rows instead. If you do that, you'll have to sew the top of the skirt closed when you're done. So make sure to leave a long tail at the beginning of the foundation chain, so you can use that to sew the top closed later. For the realistic doll, I'll work in rows. So to start the next row, I'm going to chain 1 and that'll count as the first stitch of the row. And then I'm going to single crochet into the third chain from the hook, and I'm going to start each row that way for the first few rows. Next I need to increase the work. If you want, you could continue to single crochet for a few rows to make the waistband for the shirt, but I'm just going to increase. Again, I'll be increasing 6 times per row, so I'm going to divide the total number of chains in the foundation chain, not counting the chain that counted as the first stitch of the row, by 6, which is 3. So in the first row, I'm going to increase by that number. Since I did a chain of 18 to start the skirt, I'll increase every third stitch for the first row. Alright, I finished with my first row of increase. For the rest of my rows of increase, I'm just going to continue to increase by the next number. So in the next row, I'll increase every 4th stitch. Then in the next row, I'll increase every 5th stitch of the row. Then every 6th stitch of the row. For the realistic doll, since I started the work in rows, I'm going to start to work in the round for the next row. So to join the row in the round, instead of chaining 1 for the first stitch, I'm just going to single crochet into the last stitch of the previous row. And mark that as the first stitch of the row. Now the rest of both skirts will be pretty much the same. I'm going to continue to increase by the next number for each row until the skirt reaches the length I want for the doll. So in the next row, I'll increase every 7th stitch. If you like, you could continue to increase by the next number until the skirt is long enough, or you could start to even out the circle shape in every other row. You might notice that since I'm increasing the work 6 times per row, that the circle is more like a hexagon shape after a few rows. So to even out the row, and to make the shape more like a circle, I'm going to offset the increases for every other row. In the last row, I increased every 7th stitch. Now in this next row, where I'm going to increase every 8th stitch, I'm going to place my first increase in between the first and last increases of the previous row. So I'm actually going to increase on the 4th stitch for my first increase of this row. And then I'll work the next increases every 8th stitch after the first increase so that all the increases of this row will be in between the increases of the previous row. I'm going to do this every second row so that the circle stays even. So in every row where you're increasing by an odd number, just increase normally. So in the next row, I'll do a normal increase every 9th stitch of the row. And in every row where you're increasing by an even number, place the first increase halfway between the first and last increases of the previous row. In the next row, where I'm increasing every 10th stitch, I'm going to do my first increase on the 5th stitch. And every other increase every 10th stitch after the first increase. And I'm going to continue in that pattern until the skirt reaches the length I want. Alright, I've finished increasing my doll's skirts. I continued to increase until I was increasing every 10th stitch for the basic doll, and every 16th stitch for the realistic doll. Once the skirt is finished, I'm just going to end the work by slip stitching to the first stitch of the row. Then cut off the yarn, and sew in the ends. Since I didn't work in the round for the first few rows of the realistic doll's skirt, I'm going to need to sew the top of the skirt closed when I'm finished. And now the skirts for both dolls are done. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, give it a like or share it on social media. In my next video, I'll show you how to make a basic pair of pants for your dolls. If you want to see more basic doll tutorials, you can find a playlist at the end of the video, or check in the description below. If you want to help support me in making new videos, donate to my Patreon. It's entirely optional, but if you do, you can get some perks, like having access to my videos a week before they're posted here on YouTube. You can find more information about that in the description below. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, subscribe to my channel and I'll see you all next time. Bye!